I think what this is a growing trend of Putin deciding he is going to take advantage of a dithering Donald Trump when it comes to Ukraine and push back on the allies. He's going to follow through with his warnings. And remember, he said European troops would be targeted if they were in Ukraine.
We had Sergei Markov on the programme earlier. He is a very close ally, former ally of President Putin. We asked him about those drones that flew over Poland. Some of them were shot down. And he said that those drones were redirected by President Zelensky, that this was an operation by Ukraine deliberately made to look like it had been conducted by Russia.
Not attacked against Poland by Russia. We know that Vladimir Zelensky is talking about this Russian attack, but of course Russia is senseless. If you may know that the Russian army during 3.5 years tried to solve problems with Ukrainian anti-Russian regime, but doing this not fully successful. And it's a very difficult struggle over this. So it's interest of Vladimir Zelensky, first of all, to organize such kind of attack. That's why a lot of people think realistically that these drones come because radio electronic Ukrainian forces move there. But of course, it's clear, it's not occasional.
Sorry, are you, Mr. Markov, can we just be very clear here? Are you suggesting that the reason why these drones entered Poland is Ukraine's fault?
It's one version that it's occasional. I don't believe that it's occasional. I believe that Vladimir Zelensky organized this attack by Russian drones using radio electronic inflows of them and moving them to those directions.
Well, if President Zelensky has the power to control Russian drones and move them into Polish territory, one might ask why he doesn't do that with all the other Russian drones, which do successfully hit targets inside Ukraine.
He tried to do it because you may know that when Russian drones attacked military target on the Ukrainian territory, only something 10 or 20% of them reach their target. But most of them, under the influence of the Ukrainian radio electronic capacities, change their direction, or either crashed or landed on some kind of not inhabitant region. So this could happen. You understand that, for example, if 500 of the drones moved, something less than 100 reach their target. Most of them appear to be under the control of
I understand the point you're making. I understand the point you're making. Some people might say it's quite cowardly, because it's very clear that there were a number of drones, upwards of 20, some people suggest. Some were shot down by NATO allies. They entered Polish territory. They closed down airports. It's quite cowardly to suggest that it's Ukraine doing this when it's very clearly a direct attack by Russia. That's what the Polish say.
I think that Polish authorities, if you look at we should divide Polish authority and Polish people. If you look at the results of the opinion polls, most of the Polish people believe that responsibility for such attack mostly on Ukrainian, then on the Russians, then on the Polish authorities, then on the Western countries. So only 35% of the Polish people believe that Russia is responsible for this attack. But majority of them believe that Ukrainian authorities are responsible.
Okay.
But if you look at the position of the Polish authorities, they blame Russia for doing this. We believe that this can be organized for the pushing Donald Trump to put his anti-rocket missile system to the Polish territory, which partly could be under the control of the sky of the Ukraine. So involvement of the United States Army is main goal of such Zelensky attack against imitation of Zelensky attack against Poland.
Mr. Markov, I want to ask you finally, because the real bottom line here is what stops this war? What stops the fighting? Russia was invited to talks by Donald Trump. There was a suggestion that progress could be made, but nothing has changed. In fact, attacks have intensified on Kyiv and other areas of Ukraine. Does Vladimir Putin want to end this war? Is he prepared to talk about ending this war?
Yes, Vladimir Putin wants to stop this war very much, as most of the Russian people, because for us a civil war. But for stopping this war, we should stop the main reason of this war. And this is political repressive anti-Russian regime in Ukraine. It means that all political prisoners in Ukraine who believe that Russia is friendly should be liberated, and there are thousands of them. And also political repression against Russian language, Russian culture, and Orthodox Church should be stopped. If it happens, immediately the war will be stopped.
Sergei Markov, many thanks for joining us on the programme this morning.
No, I think that's just total Russian propaganda. And the Polish foreign minister made a very strong statement yesterday about the direction of these drones, that they weren't even by accident. It was the strong belief of both NATO and Poland that they were directed at Poland. I think what this is a growing trend of Putin deciding he is going to take advantage of a dithering Donald Trump when it comes to Ukraine and push back on the allies. He's going to follow through with his warnings. And remember, he said European troops would be targeted if they were in Ukraine. I was in Kyiv when the major bombings happened a couple of weeks ago, and the British Council, the European Commission buildings were hit. And last week we saw the hitting of government buildings in Kyiv for the first time. I think this is an overall direction that the Kremlin has started to make different decisions that we should all be aware of, because they will affect our security, to go another phase, another step, which is closing in on more of Ukraine if he can, pushing back the West, giving them sort of warnings, threatening in the way they do, layered on with a huge amount of propaganda and misinformation. But it's very clear there's been a significant change, probably in the last year, from the Kremlin in policy. If you remember, I have to be careful, there's a court case going on or about to go on in the United Kingdom about who or what targeted Keir Starmer's properties. That would be a significant change of policy by the Russian state.
You talk about this escalation and the idea that there are a number of things that are linked here, that this is a test essentially by Russia against NATO. If you were still Defence Secretary, how would you respond to this? Because there are some people who suggest Russia only ever takes note of direct action, and that this is the point at which, we really do need to show that we are serious.
Well, the way I used to respond was make sure there was always a response to this type of Russian behaviour. When the first time that Russia hit civilian buildings in Ukraine after the initial invasion, I authorized putting in the Starstreak short-range anti-air missile. When he continued to do that, when he continued, for example, to block the shipping in the Black Sea and try and starve Ukraine away from its grain and steel grain, I pushed and authorized a Storm Shadow to be deployed into Ukraine, to be given to the Ukrainians to use. And every time we did something like that, we used to summon the Russian military attaché from the embassy, who is, of course, like any Russian defense attaché, a GRU hood. He would be called into the ministry and he would be briefed by a senior civil servant of why we were doing these things. So they understood right back in the Kremlin that there was a reaction and a response to Russian bad behavior.
Is that lacking now?
I think there's a bit too much delay. I think there's a lot of words often, but not a lot of action. I would be doubling down now today. I would be saying, right, what more can we put into Ukraine? Are there any new capabilities that we can give the Ukrainians? Can we, make sure Russia understands that there will be a response to this type of behavior, and it is not cost-free.
The Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has said that he believes we are closer to open conflict than at any time since the Second World War. Do you agree with that analysis?
Well, I stand by my sort of leaving interview with the Sunday Times when I left, that I believe towards the end of this decade, we will be in a place where there will be a war that will involve the United Kingdom. It might be a Cold War, like a full-on Cold War, or it might be a hot war, but that is the direction of travel somewhere in the world. We shouldn't forget that China and the United States sort of have a date between 27, 29 when they both believe China will be military capable of taking Taiwan or asserting itself, and that could cause all sorts of conflicts. What we see in obviously Israel and the recent attack on Qatar will be realignment in the Gulf, where they won't be trusting American security guarantees, and all of that sort of destabilization, coupled with a huge dose of what I would say is anxiousness, driven often by social media as well, creates a place where people feel insecure and uncertain. And when you have some real aggressors on the scene, like President Putin, that dangerous cocktail could very much lead to a conflict towards the end of this decade.
Finally, you mentioned social media there. We're talking about the death of Charlie Kirk on the programme today. He was shot at a political rally overnight in America. Is there a concern, should we be concerned, that this event may well be exploited by nations like Russia that are seeking to create division, that we have seen them do this in the past, that this may now be used in that similar vein against countries like America, against the UK and other nations?
Well, first of all, Kate, I think what I would certainly say is, look, today I think it's horrendous what has happened to Charlie Kirk. Didn't always agree with a lot of what he said, but he was trying to have debate in our campuses and their campuses around the United States. Debate is a healthy part of our political culture, and he was, open to being challenged. And I think, for him to lose his life this way is a tragedy, and we should all take a significant or serious reflection on that. We should also recognise that political violence is growing, not just in the United States. It's growing in Europe as well. We saw the recent, if you remember, the assassination attempt on the leader of Slovakia as well. And we should be very, very worried about that. And I think part of that is because our discourse now is full of very aggressive language. You only have to look at the Twitter feed on mine, where people will call me a traitor for criticizing either Donald Trump or something to do with Russia. You'll see that. You'll see lots of angry, aggressive language around this dreadful killing of Charlie Kirk. And so, first of all, I think we do need, as you said earlier, about reflecting on diplomacy and language matters. We also need to recognize that social media plays a very large part in radicalizing people. I was the security minister before I was defense secretary when we had the growth of ISIS and lots of young people going off to fight for the cause of ISIL, if you remember. A lot of them were groomed online using social media platforms. And when we used to reach out to those social media platforms as a government, they used to refuse to help us, right? That was, in those days, social media like Twitter wouldn't help, YouTube wouldn't help. Telegram, which is obviously a sort of bizarre Russian channel, none of them would help. That is layering anxiousness and division. And then when you get a state like Russia who uses social media to magnify division for the sake of simply destabilizing country, it is a dangerous, toxic mix. And we saw that with the Black Lives Matter. If you remember the Black Lives Matter protests in the United States, we saw the Russian state engage in magnifying both wings of that debate. They magnified the extreme part of the hard Black Lives Matter, hard left group, but they also magnified the sort of KKK type, Ku Klux Klan, extreme right, for the sole purpose of trying to cause division. And I think the West needs to realize Russia is not our friend in many of these places. Their job, their mission is to destabilize and cause friction. And language is one of those things that can magnify the friction. So we need to tone down the language, and we need to do something about political violence and people that use language to invoke it.
So Ben Wallace, former Defence Secretary, many thanks for your time this morning.